One of the challenges with growing smart beta from an implementation standpoint is how do I use these ideas? Where does it fit in my portfolio? Most investors who build diversified portfolios don't have a bucket called smart beta or factors. They have active and they have passive. So they often ask, where does this fit? What do I replace to fund this position? And I think as an industry, we struggle to answer that question. I think Rob might argue you would sell your active and get cheaper active with factors. Others might say, well, these are transparent, systematic portfolios, so you would sell your passive and take better beta by getting your factor exposure. But the truth of the matter is the industry is crying out for a simple way to think about the implementation of these ideas.
Craig, taking that theme a little further is because it's hard to define and no one seems to agree on what the definition is, it has to be confusing to investors. So how should investors look at smart beta, and what are some of the things they need to think about?
They need to think about the kind of outcome they're after. And I'll give you an example. If an investor is thinking of buying a low volatility or a minimum volatility fund, the investor needs to realize he's probably going to underperform a rising market or a strong bull market, certainly. He's probably going to outperform in a falling market. That's the pattern of returns that low volatility factor gives you. If that's a congenial pattern for you, that may be an appropriate factor strategy for you to invest in. But you need to understand what it is. I mean, the worst thing that any investor can do is look at the returns that factors have generated over time, because they all, as we said earlier, they've all generated positive alpha over long periods of time. But the environments in which they've generated it and the way in which they've generated it is different. If all you look at is the alpha without realizing what went into it, the first time you're disappointed, you'll sell. It's the worst possible thing for you to do.
Rob?
Yeah, I think to me it boils down to one word, and that one word is suitability. And so from an investor's perspective, I think Mark is absolutely right. From an investor's perspective, what we all have to understand is not, especially if we're going down the road of factor investing, not every single one of those factors is going to perform the same way in the same market cycle. And so from an investor's perspective, we need to spend as much time educating from an index industry perspective. The product sponsors need to spend as much time as they can educating on what type of market cycle are we in, what type of risk return profile, and what type of performance is a particular factor going to provide. And then how do you implement that in a portfolio depending on what the investor's time horizon is.
Mark?
The truth is we're all factor investors, whether we're active or passive, and having a common way to look at it makes sense.